here we are again, and I want to tell you about some more fun stuff. And there's always a story. Everything's got to have a story, because that's what it's about. When you collect stuff, you have the memories, you have the stories that go along with it. Everything has some sort of connection. That's why you saved it. That's why you get to relive the memories when you experience these things again. That's why you preserve things for the future, so you can share it with other people and also bring back your memory, put yourself back into that time period. So over here, we have my monorail collection over here. Now, people are going to say, well, you know what? A lot of people bought those monorails over at the parks or whatever. You know what's interesting? They had something when I was working there. It was called the I Have an Idea program. They had a few boxes around the different employee cast member tunnels, utilidors, whatever you want to call them. And they would have a box, and you could drop in a slip for I Have an Idea, and they were going to, read it and see if they could implement it. And sometimes they gave you an award if it was, a good idea, and they wanted to give you a pat on the back. And people used to fill in these ideas all the time. Well, I dropped a few in, and I actually was a winner of the I Have an Idea award program. And I won for a two-light signal system that I designed for the Walt Disney Story attraction on Main Street, USA, over Town Square. And I was working on Main Street at the time, and I found it amazing as they were telling me what to do in order to run the attraction, and we had to listen through the walls of two walls into a back area. It was a little subterranean below the level of the theaters, and we had to listen to the sound of hydraulic motors that would be whirring, that were running the exit doors. So we're standing there in the guest area on a little podium ready to give our presentation for the entrance spiel announcements coming into the theater. And to know when it was time to give the announcements, because the doors were going to open automatically in a few seconds, we had to listen for that sound in the background to know when the doors stopped whirring, that we had about 30 seconds before the front doors were going to open for the next load. Well, oddly enough, you can't hear it all the time. At least I couldn't hear it all the time. There's a bunch of people there. They make noise. They're talking and rattling. And I'm supposed to hear the sound of this through two walls. And sometimes you could hear it and sometimes you couldn't. So a lot of times people would miss the timing for the presentation of their announcements for the Walt Disney Story. So I have an electrical engineering background, so I went down into the area where I could find these hydraulic motors and that were running the doors, and I glanced at their control system, and without touching anything to mess them up or getting involved with the way their system operated, I simply drew up a simple design that would tap onto the existing solenoids for the hydraulic motors that ran the doors that we were timing our spiels on. So I had an external circuit that could tap onto the signal from those solenoids and then do a function of timing for the operator in the front through a two-light signal system. And I designed it with two lights for simplicity, trying to make it very inexpensive and very simple for anybody to understand. So there would be two lights mounted on the ceiling in an area that the operator could see from his podium over the guests' heads, and another in parallel down at the podiums where you first bring people in at the turnstiles. You could have another set of the two lights to indicate what's going on. Because it was a low volume attraction, they only budgeted one operations host in order to run both theaters. They had twin theaters, and all the areas of the pre-show with the different memorabilia and answering questions and letting people in. One guy had to do it all. So you could be over at the front and not hear any motors. You had to watch your watch, figuring out about what time it is, because the shows would start automatically. I developed this two-light signal system that would work whether there's one theater running or two theaters running, because sometimes they only ran one theater. They were using the other theater for some sort of announcement, meeting, or presentation, or was just down for whatever reason. So it would actually adapt itself to whether there was one theater, two theaters, and when the exit doors would open for one of the theaters, one of the lights would go on, and it would remain on. And when the doors closed, the second light would go on. The second light going on would tell the operator time to start your announcements. The doors just closed. The first light was more of a warning, letting you know the doors are open, get ready, be in position. The light stayed on, the doors closed, second light came on, make your announcements. When the entrance doors would open, it would reset the light system so it would be ready for the next signal again. So I won for the I Have an Idea because I drew it up and I gave them the circuits, whatever, and I figured it was only cost about $200 and, you know, 2 guys, 8 hours to run the wires and do it. And it was quite an honor. I was only there a short time, and they made the presentation right there at the Walt Disney Story, which is just coincidental because they had their meetings over there. So how did we get onto this subject of the I Have an Idea? Came about because of these monorail toys that they sold everywhere. So I was also an avid purchaser of Disney merchandise, and I would always be buying stuff even before I was a cast member there. And I remember I used to think to myself, why don't they have like toy trains? Why don't they have a monorail set that they could actually have for people to buy? And I was no longer working at the Magic Kingdom at that time, so I was no longer eligible for the I Have an Idea program. So one day I was talking with a nice merchandise host who was over at the Contemporary, and we got into a conversation, and I said to him, I says, do you know about the I Have an Idea program? And I explained it to him. He didn't know about it. It still existed at the time. And I said to him, I says, why don't you write this up? And I told him about my idea of making a monorail toy train set, like electric trains, but monorails for people to purchase. I said, I guarantee you that would be a big hit. People would buy them all the time. Lo and behold, a couple years later, they had them all over the place, and it was their #1 big seller. And I know that that was my idea, and whoever that kid was that I was talking to, he got the award because of what I told him. So I, of course, had to buy them because it was my idea to begin with. I wanted them. I loved them. And they made the monorails, and they run on their track. And then they also expanded. They sold little hotels that went along with it. This is a Grand Floridian. There's a Polynesian. Over there, of course, we have the Contemporary. And over in the distance, we have the Animal Kingdom, you know, and the Disney Studios when they had the big hat and the switch station. So I set it up as Walt Disney World basically is, with the transportation and ticket center and the other loop going over to the Epcot area, and there's the monorail station here for the Magic Kingdom, and then the spur loop that goes out to the round table. I set it up as it is. And of course, me knowing the areas just as they were, we have our Seven Seas Lagoon in the middle, and beyond the Contemporary, there's Bay Lake. But, you know, we have to have the Randy touch with everything. And inside the Seven Seas Lagoon area, we have Randy heads, which are floating in the Seven Seas Lagoon area, and you'll see some of the Randy hat collection over there. And the first one on the left is one of my Steam Trains hats. They're different from the Main Street hat. The hat to the second one in from the left is a Main Street hat, but the one on the left being the Steam Trains is more of a pillbox style, and it has the metallic emblem in the front, which was significant only for Steam Trains at the time. And to the right of the Main Street hat, that would be the third one over, we have a straw hat. And believe it or not, as Main Street operations, sometimes we wore that hat also. Today, they kind of wear that hat all the time. They've changed the theming for the Main Street operations hosts, and they don't have the same power and authority, so they wear that hat all the time. But you will notice that that hat is perfectly shaped. The brim is completely flat. The ribbon is in perfect condition. The top is flat. The hat hiding to the far right of that, it looks similar to the Main Street hat, but it's very floppy on the top. That's actually from the riverboats. The Mark Twain, which they call it now Mark Twain, but originally it was the Admiral Joe Fowler and the Richard F. Irvine. They had 2 riverboats that ran around the rivers of America over at Frontierland near Liberty Square. And those are the hats that the captain would wear, and the different ship hands that would be on the riverboats. And although I did not actually ever work at the riverboats, I have the hats because I actually worked in Main Street operations, but there were many times that I got to fill in different areas, just as kind of like a spot check type situation. It's kind of another story we can't get into too well, but I have many costumes that Randy was in just for a very brief period as I was incognito. But setting up here with my monorail setup, and of course the monorail going through to Contemporary, which was my dear hotel. Of course, if you look up on the ceiling above you, you'll see more of those orange and silver Contemporary Resort Hotel lights, which mounted along the hotel rooms as you went through the hotel and you saw them. It's very fitting for my setup here. In front here, we have a little bit of a Main Street depiction. To the side behind that, I have a Walt Disney World train setup going around with the Magic Kingdom in the middle and the train station. We have Space Mountain and the Star Jets over there in the background, because that's the Magic Kingdom as it would be approaching from the Transportation and Ticket Center, keeping in line with my setup. Now, I brought a few of these out from the inside of the circle to be seen, because this is obviously the Emporium, we have City Hall, we have the Main Street Cinema, and of course the Main Street Omnibus, which is so dear to me. The Emporium, actually very, very special, because this building we're in, the old Woolworths department store here on Main Street, which is Pacific Avenue in Wildwood, New Jersey, is actually constructed the same way. If you take away all those posts you see in the front and the Victorian rooftop, you will see it is a yellow brick building with the red ribbon signs that say Emporium in gold letters. That was your typical 5 and 10 look that Woolworths department stores used all over the country with their famous stores. This building was a Woolworths department store. It is made of the same yellow brick. It has the same red ribbon signs. It once said F.W. Woolworths and Company, with the red signs and the gold raised lettering. The gold lettering was gone from Woolworths when I came, because they took it down when Woolworths went out of business. I had new lettering made that's gold and raised, and it says Randyland. So this is Randyland's origin. When you look at the Emporium from Main Street at Walt Disney World, that's what I envisioned when I purchased this building right here at Main Street in Wildwood, because I saw this as an area that could be developed by myself into my own Main Street USA right here in Wildwood. Well, here we have Main Street in Wildwood. I have the Emporium, and I brought in 2 of the omnibuses from Walt Disney World so they could run up and down Main Street, and it's an important part of it. It's who I am, Main Street Randyland. This is where it comes from. It's the origin of it. And of course, with my Magic Kingdom setup, I have another 2 omnibuses inside, but behind it, which is not exactly set up like Disney, because this would be their Frontierland, this is my train set when I was a kid. And the trains would go around, and we used to have this down in our basement, and I needed a place to put it, so I put my train set up here, making it my Frontierland for my little Walt Disney World railroad setup. And I just wanted to share that with you today, because I thought this would be really interesting. And it's always have to have my touch on it, because this is my world, which is blended in with my memories of Walt Disney World and all the different shore places that we were. And it's my history, it's your history. We live them all with a common history, and I'm sharing them here with you on the Main Street Randyland YouTube channel. I hope you enjoyed it, and you know what? We're going to have another great episode coming up real soon. I hope you'll join us. Be sure to subscribe. Bye.